This is where we left off in the last session, just after fixing a couple of those problems. So, now let's look at the extrusion. So we're wanting to get the fin out of the side here, okay? And there's a couple of ways to kind of, well, extrusion is the way we're going to use, but there's a couple of things that you could consider doing with it. This is quite a big area for something that's, gets quite thin. You could bring it into a shoulder though, or we could add more geometry through this to kind of make a thinner area around this. A couple of different ways. So let's just consider one of them, just to show you a few more techniques and how some of the tools we've looked at in the session can be used. So what I'm going to do is just go into my back to my unsmooth version, press 1 on the keyboard. I'm going to go and go into edge mode. What I'll do is just going to grab this edge, click, shift double click, just check around the back and you can see that this hasn't gone the whole way through, so I just need to just select these two. Okay. What I'm going to do with these is bring these, I want to put another cut basically through the center, vertically on the y-axis. But if I do that at the minute, we're going to be left with vertices that are really close together, and it can create a pinching effect when that happens. So to give it a bit more room, what I want to do is move these edges up. Now we looked at this in the session. If it was just to use a move tool on these, what we're going to end up doing is losing the shape that we're creating in the fish. Okay. So what we can do is actually use our slide tool. So I'm just going to go to my custom tools. I'm just going to go into my slide. And then we can just use the middle mouse button and just start bringing these up. If I just click down here and shift double click, and again I just need to select these back points using shift. Okay, what I can do now is middle mouse button and again just bring these down a little bit. So it just makes a bit more room for this. Let's bring these down a little more. Just give me a little bit more room in the center. So now I'm going to go into my, let's just come out of that tool. I'm going to go into my insert edge loop, and let's just drag down the center point and put this on. Okay. Remember, all of these tools are in your edit mesh. So our slide edge tool, our insert edge loop tool as well. Okay. So we've got that middle line down there now. And that's not a bad thing to have. Now where the fin comes out, we can just do a bit of tweaking with this now. I'm just going to go in and go into my vertices mode, and we can start bringing this down a little bit. So I'm just going to select these vertices around where I want. I'm going to have the fin coming up this kind of area. So I'm going to start bringing these down. So just on the move tool, I'm just going to move these down just a little bit. I'm going to do the same these points, so just shift on this one. Maybe this one not so much. And I'm just going to bring these up. Whenever you create a new geometry, you should always consider how it's going to affect other geometry and also the starting shape for it. So I'm trying to create this kind of shape. I know when it's smooth it's going to give more of an elliptical shape, a flatter elliptical shape. And that's the area I want to extrude out from. If we was to extrude out from this, we get something like a circle straight away when smoothed. So just trying to get a rough idea of the shape before you start extruding is a good thing to do. We'll always need to go in and reshape this anyway, but just as a starting point for this. So now I'm going to go into my face. Now I can select this face. What I am going to do, which we don't necessarily need to, but just to show you that it can be done, is I'm going to work on both sides. If you knew that you're going to go into a symmetry version of this, work on one side to tweak the other automatically, then you wouldn't necessarily need to do this. But just to show you that it can be done. So I'm going to shift click on the other side, and I'm going to go into my extrude tool, so I can go through edit mesh or just on my toolbar. So how this works is all dependent on this thing that we looked in the session, so icon up here. So right now what we're doing is working an extrusion based on the object normals. So you can see where these are placed is on the normals, along the normals of this particular face that we have selected. Okay. So if I start doing things like extrusions, you can see it does it equally on both sides. Now what's the difference if I go on, click on the icon to actually set it to basically kind of the object center. And now if I move these out, what it's doing is moving them both in the same direction. So we're actually getting an indentation here rather than an extrusion. So that's just one thing to watch out for when you're doing this kind of work. So let's, first of all, I'm going to create a bit of a smaller area for this. So this time I'm actually going to use, no, in fact, let's go back to our object normals. So I'm going to scale this down. I'm going to scale it down this way, just to create a bit of a flatter shape. And what I will do with this as well is just bring this out a tiny amount, just on both sides. Okay. Now we can use the G key to add another version of the tool. So this is adding another extrusion onto this. And again, make sure I'm in this normal mode and drag out. And again, you can see that that's dragging out on this side. If I move these down, see that works. Move these back. Now the problem can come with this when we start moving on the what is in this particular thing, the z-axis. So if I'm moving on this z-axis this way, okay, I'm moving this forward towards the front of the fish. Notice on this one, it's actually pushing it against the normal this way. So that causes problems on this particular thing. Now we can do one of two things here. I could just go into the move tool and move those backwards, that'd be fine. But if I want to make any more tweaks here and I want to stay in this particular tool, what I can do is actually set this to this object center. And now when I move these on this point, they both move in the same direction. Okay. If I want to bring this back, I need to move back to the object normals to bring that back in line. So I'm just going to bring that out. I'm going to scale this down. Maybe scale this out a little bit. I'm going to press G again. Still on my normals, and bring this out. Bring this down. And again, if you want to move this backwards, you can just do that. Let's bring that back to normal mode, and let's just scale this in. Okay. So that's just a few things to watch out for when you're using the extrusion tool. It's to do with this icon, as I say, it's whether it's normal faced, based on the normals of a polygon or the polygon selection, or you base it on the object properties. So let's just come out of that, press Q to come out of the tool, just into my selection tool, let's press 3, and then we've got our fin. We can still go in and tweak this, we can still go and move the vertices around, anything we need. Just be aware that if you're not planning on doing a symmetrical model, then you will need to move both sides at the same time. Okay. So let's just look at the eyes. Let's just go back into our unsmooth mode. So with the eyes, I want them coming around this area here. This is quite a long polygon though. We want the eyes to be pretty roundish, so we're trying to get as square a shape as possible to start from. So the best way to deal with this is to add another edge loop through here, tighten this up a bit. So again, we can use one of our tools, and we'll do the insert edge loop tool. Now I'll just drag on this edge and bring this in, just around there. So I'm starting to get more of a square shape. Again, be aware that if we add new geometry, we may have to tweak original geometry. I'll just leave that for now. And let's go into our face selection. Again, I'm working on both sides. Just coming out of that tool. Just be careful when you're working in some of these tools because they do keep on. So I am actually still on the insert poly loop. Let's just set that. Let's go into our either cube for selection mode. Now let's just shift select both of these. Let's go to our extrusion tool. Again, working on the normals of this. I'm going to bring this in. Let's just scale this in this way as well. Okay. Let's come out of cube to go into out of the tool. And let's just look at that in shaded. I go into object mode. Okay, there you go. Now for the eyeball itself, you would use something like a polysphere. Much better to do that rather than trying to model that out of this section. And if you want the eyes to move, it's best that they are a separate object to be able to rig them separately. So that's not an issue. What you may want to do though is tighten some of the edges around this eye. So the way it's going in is quite soft right now. So let's just go and fix that. So I'll go back into my face mode. Let's just press 1 just for a second. Well, first of all, do is get these two, and just with the scale tool, just in the center of these, I'm going to scale that in, and that will bring them in together. It's sort of the other way of doing it without having our normals directions. So we can just scale those together, make that a bit deeper. What it can also do, so if you look in that, it's just making it deeper, but it's not really tightening up this edge around here. So if I go into this, and I'll keep in my smooth mode, I'm just going to go into edge mode, but I could stay in face as well. I'm going to use my insert edge loop tool again. I'm just going to drag around. Let's see if I can find the point because it's somewhere over here. In fact, let's just go back into our normal mode. Now let's drag on this one, and I'm just going to bring up a version so it's closer to this edge. Okay. What I can also do is bring one closer to the back edge. And now when I go into smooth mode, I've got a much more obvious socket there. So you can see we need to do the same on the other side. So I've still got my tool on there, so let's drag up to this side. Let's just drag up to this side. Just test that. We get a much more defined area. Okay. Let's go back to object mode. Let's have a look at that. So if you want to tighten up any areas, the key to doing it is often by just putting another loop through it, closer to the set of edges. This is the way that subdivision works. Okay. So that we've got our basic fish. And we can carry on doing extrusions for, say, the top and the bottom fins, maybe the mouth as well. There are issues with that over symmetry, but I'll mention those problems when we talk about symmetry. So in fact, let's just finish off by just looking at the top. So I'm just going to go into my face mode. Let's go into my just thinking about the options for this extrusion. Now if we go in and say do an edge selection and do an extrusion, this will actually extrude out those edges, but we have no 3D shape on this. Now this can be quite useful when using things like alpha materials, but if we're using this in symmetry, it could cause problems. Okay. We could do more cuts through here to actually create more of a finite point around this area. That's another solution we could do. But one of the ways I'm going to look at it is the way that it kind of work down here. So I'm just going to go in and just go back to my selection tool. Just go into face. I'm just going to do a few more cuts through this. I'm going to have my fin here coming around this area. I don't want it to come all the way down here and down here near the tail. So I'm just going to do a few more edge loops. So I'm going to click one around the center of here, one around the center of here. Okay. I'm going to go into my face selection. Make sure I'm on my select tool. Let's get these. I'm going to do an extrude, but just initially scale this down. You can see when I do this, we're creating a problem around that center line. So what I need to do is switch it to our other mode and bring this in. Let me just click back on this. So this needs quite a bit of tweaking. One of the things we can just do, if I just come out of this mode, go into my scale tool, flatten that out a little bit. Ultimately, you want to be going in and tweaking the vertices. So let's just go into Vertex selection. Let's just grab this one and shift click on this one. Just move. I've got this one. Move those back a little bit. Let's grab this one and this one. Move those back. Just going to scale those into each other a little bit. Maybe grab those two, scale those two in. We have got some. Okay, so there's just a little problem here with these. This is probably from the extrusion from the edges. Just notice that there's an extra vert this side and this side. So a quick fix for this. Let me just actually show you this in more detail. You see we've actually got a middle kind of section in there. Let's just select these two vertices. Let's go to Edit Mesh and let's just merge the center. Do the same with these two. Grab these two. And now we've just got this. Must have bothered to another point. Bring this up. Now I can actually see it welded through there. Let's just undo this a couple of times. I must have got an extra edge. So let's shift click on this, shift click on this. Okay, let's grab this one and this one. Check around. Edit. Merge the center. Okay. Okay, so now that's fixed. Let's just check with the wireframe. There still seem to be a couple of issues there in this front section. So let's see if we can grab let's have a look inside. Yeah. This is always the kind of thing you're looking for, especially when we're working over the center line. Let's see if we can get this center. Let's get one of these edges. So this is one of the problem edges here. Let's see if we can just backspace this. Okay, border edge. Let's grab this one. Try to see where this one is going. So that's down there somewhere. When you're working in wireframe, you can just move down these edges. Now let's see if we can get rid of this polygon. If we just move this one down, let's just go into our face mode. Let's select this now and let's delete this. Let's go back into our vert mode. Bring this up. You can see we've still got this issue with the edge. So again, let's just reveal this face. And this is the offending one here. Okay. Let's just check that this is just isolated now. Okay, that looks a little better. Back into wireframe. Okay, so you can see that extra kind of face there has been deleted. Now we are left with this problem here. We've got this hole. So what I'm going to do is just grab my edge, double click on that, and that's going to select this, what's called an open border. And I can just go to mesh, fill hole. Again, let's just check this in vert mode. Okay, all seems to be working now. So now let's just go back into face mode. Grab this, let's go on to our extrusion. Let's now bring this up. To my move tool, I'm just going to move this back a little bit. Let's just go into our vertices mode. Let's just start shaping this a little bit. You may find is that when you subdivide this, actually that's probably a bit too much, so let's just bring this back. Okay. I'm just going to tighten this edge up around the bottom like we did with the eye socket. I'm just going to this mode. Let's go on our edge tool. Let's just drag this down. Okay. There you can see that's tightened out. So now I may bring this out a little bit more. Let's just go into our vertex. Mode. That was just vertex face, ignore that. And maybe bring this up a lot more. Okay. And then we've got the makings of a fish. Let's go back into object mode. Let's come out of this. And what we can do is just click the grid off. Okay, and there we have a basic fish.